right, everybody, this is Mrs. Welch. Just like with demand, I'm going to go through supply. This will be probably 2 videos since this is a lot of content, especially with supply, because now we're putting it all together. By this point, you should have watched all the YouTube videos that we've posted and read the notes, read the book. So you should be the experts. You really should be teaching this to me. So for that reason, I'm only going over some key things and some stuff that might be outside of what's written. So we're going to go ahead and get started. All right, so these are key terms that you guys can look. You guys are the experts now, so I'm going to move on. So we talked about the law of demand. We said the law of demand was like a seesaw, right? When price goes up, demand goes down. When price goes down, demand goes up. So it's just like a seesaw. On the flip side, the law of supply is a little different. So as prices rise, because remember, both these laws are dependent on price. As prices go up, producers or suppliers are going to offer more of that product or good because you're hoping that you're going to make a profit. It makes sense, right? If price is going up, you're like, cha-ching, money, let's go. So keep that in mind. But if prices drop, you're going to be less motivated, right, to actually produce a lot of stuff. And plus, you're probably not going to be able to afford to do so because you're not going to be getting all the money back that you need. We'll talk more about that in a bit. So, like I just said, as the price increases, producers are going to offer more of it. As it decreases, they'll offer less. There are 2 movements at play that can increase or decrease supply besides price. Firms changing their level of production. So remember when we talked about technology and efficiency? If more technology comes out that makes things more efficient, you have more time to make more goods. Sorry, that's my laundry. And firms entering or exiting the market. A good example of this would be like a few years ago with the fidget spinners. Previously with fidget spinners, they were meant for students that had special needs that needed to expend energy in a different way without having to get up and be a distraction to the class. That was kind of the idea of these tools. Unfortunately, other students saw them and were like, hey, that's a cool toy. And all of a sudden it became, I want that toy. Before you knew it, there were a lot of websites that were medical websites, actually, that were producing these fidget spinners. They were getting overwhelmed. So then you have the toy companies pop in, and they're like, I want to make money. People really want these fidget spinners. So all of a sudden, there are a lot of suppliers that entered the market. And we'll talk about that more as we move on. So like I said, or I don't know if I said this, supply is like an elevator. And yes, I made this infographic too, so you better really enjoy it. When price goes down, supply drops. Every time I move my mouse, this thing pops up. Evidently, this is a hotel in San Francisco, but I thought it was a very pretty elevator, so I was like, okay, we'll use it. On the flip side, not as pretty of a picture here, but if price goes up, supply rises. Now, this is all dependent on price because if you try to manipulate the law of supply, it can bite you in the butt. I'll give you an example since some of you who are taking U.S. history, you've probably talked about this right before we left school. The Great Depression. So what happens if you try to increase supply without the price going up? That's what happened to farmers in the Great Depression. They had increase in technology, and they also had they had also been subsidized by the government up until 1920, and the government kind of cut them off at that point. But they've been encouraged to grow so much to feed those soldiers, right, for World War I, and so they were still producing a lot. And in their minds, they're like, if we produce a lot, we'll make more money. But actually what ends up happening is the law of supply breaks, and it says nope. And actually, if there's too much supply, the price does go down. So you can break this law. It's not fun. Suppliers are constantly, this slide is saying, always looking for new ways to increase profits, gimmicks, and sales. So you can see here, this pretty much sums it up. The whole flat screen TV, right? So if we can have flat screen TVs, why not flat screen ovens and dishwashers and refrigerators? Now, obviously, the humor, this is such a boomer comic, but the humor here is that obviously no one's going to buy that. It's not useful. So suppliers, if people don't buy, and that's why they're married to the law of demand so much. If people don't buy, they got to cut their losses and go with something else. All right. So I'm not going to go over this. I expected you guys to watch the video. But rising prices encourage more firms to join the market and add to the quantity supplied of the good. So the example was 70s music. In the 1970s, you had rock bands like the Rolling Stones. The Beatles had broken up, but you have members of the Beatles making disco albums. It's kind of weird because they become popular. When something new comes along, people want to jump on that train to make money. So that's the law of supply. You saw this video, and yes, it starts off a little awkwardly with Katy Perry, but it's a good example. And there'll be another example of that later that we'll talk about. Supply of a good can be measured with the supply schedule. So just like the demand schedule, it shows how much at different flat prices are you willing to supply this time. So you, if they were looking at individual supply schedules, you, Mr. Pizza Person, or Miss Pizza Person, or just Pizza Person, at $1 per slice, you are only going to make 100 slices of pizza a day. And that's because you can really only afford to make 100 slices per day, right? However, you can see it slowly increase because as you have the price of pizza go up, you're making more money. So in theory, you can produce more. Now, obviously, we're not just going to rack up our price to $6 and be like, woohoo! What happens is you have the law of demand interfering. The law of demand slaps through the law of supply and you get your market clearing price. We'll talk about that in just a bit. However, most economists are looking at markets as a whole, not individuals. So you can see here that $6 pizzerias in Northern Virginia, there's 3,500 slices a day. Only at $1, they'd only be willing to supply 1,000. Pretty simple. Supply curve. So, as you can guess, is the opposite of the demand curve. Supply to the sky, as Mr. Clifford says. So, it's going up from bottom left to top right. Make sure you know that. So, as you can see, prices are low. You're only willing to buy 100, or not buy, excuse me, supply 100. When price is high, you're willing to supply a lot more at 350. So it's just mapped out. Elasticity. Good news! We are not doing any math with supply. But if you really want to, it's the same formula. The exact same. And yes, the whole 1 and less than 1, all that still applies. So let's talk about elasticity. Most supply items are elastic, just like with demand. But inelastic is extremely rare to find. However, there's one classic example that is really good, and it really depends on time. So it's price and time that makes things elastic or inelastic. And if there's not a lot of time, then suppliers don't have a lot of time to react, right, in a change in price. So the classic example is cranberries. So cranberries are only grown in a certain area of the world, basically New England up to some of the Nova Scotia areas of Canada. It has a certain climate that works just for it. It can only be grown once a year. It cannot be grown in a greenhouse because you have to have these they have to be able to harvest them with water, like you see here. So what you get is what you get with the supply. They can't change it. If there's a short supply that year, that's a short supply that year. If there's a lot of cranberries that year, there's a lot of cranberries that year. If all of a sudden everybody wants cranberry everything, so like pumpkin spice lattes in the fall, very, very popular. Let's say it changes to cranberry spice. That sounds good, actually. I think that would be good. I need to market that, or what is it? Trademark that? Yeah. So cranberry spice lattes become super popular. Well, there's not much cranberry suppliers can do that year. What they've grown is what they've grown. They have to wait all the way until late summer to adjust how much they grow. And even then, they're going to probably have to dig out ponds. This is a whole ordeal. It's not just like planting seeds into the ground and hoping for the best. So it would take a lot of time to make cranberries much more elastic. Time that's just not feasible. Elasticity in the long run, well, suppliers can always react in the long run. So bread is a good one, right? If the price of bread goes up, suppliers are going to easily be able to make more bread. And they'll churn it out quickly. You can make bread pretty quick. Some of y'all might have been doing that on your at-home excursions. Let's move on. All right, so let's put the two together. All right, they've got football tickets here as an example, but I don't really care about this. I care about this point right here, if you can see my cursor. So the market clearing price, basically where does demand and supply meet? This is it. This is what we've been waiting for. Because as a supplier, so we're looking at this line right here, you want to probably, if price were super high, you would really want to be supplying a lot. But the problem is, up here, people who are buying, this is consumers with demand, are they going to want to buy those football tickets? No. So you're going to be forced to lower your price until the customer is willing to buy it. And that's the market clearing price. Down here, a little different. If football games are a dime a dozen, basically you can watch any football game you want ever, and there's different leagues. Let's pretend, since we got the XFL coming now, and let's say there's like 20 different leagues, and anyone can go watch any game, right? All of a sudden the prices really decrease. But the demand is going to be high because games are cheap, right? This is a shortage. So up here is a surplus, and down here is a shortage. Which, there we go. So the suppliers have supplied too much in a surplus. And the shortage suppliers are not willing to supply as much. Shortages are mostly temporary, so right now the whole toilet paper shortage, that's going to fix itself because they want to make money. There's a huge demand. So don't worry, they'll fix that. But surpluses always fix themselves easily because people need to sell their product. So what they'll do is they'll sell it on Overstock or outlets, chains and stuff like that. Big Lots is an Overstock place. So they're trying to sell for cheap. They'll put things on sale, and that way people will be willing to buy. On the flip side, shortage, sometimes it's a little harder to fix. So let's look at this. So you can see here surplus, right? And by the way, it's so easy to calculate surplus and shortages. It's simple addition and subtraction. So there is a surplus of whatever good this is. There's 60 of this. They've supplied it, but only 10 people want it, so there's a surplus of 50. 60 minus 10. A shortage, though, there are 55, we'll just say it's 55 people who want it, but there's only 10 available, so that means there's 45 people that don't get it but want it, right? All right, we're going to stop there, and we will continue on.